Well, let's take another walk. This time, let's continue our conversation about best use of space, the correct use of land for the optimal purposes. In this case, we're going to focus on death and what happens to your piece of meat when you die. You meat puppet. You ever see that video called "We Are All Made of"? No, they are all made of meat. No, they're made of meat. They're made of meat. Look that up. There's several versions of it, and they're all quite funny. Anyway, we are made of meat, and eventually that meat malfunctions, and we die. And that's an uncomfortable topic for many people. I see no reason not to just confront it directly. It's going to confront you someday. So, and you know, you'll probably know people who die before you do, unless you're first. Hopefully not, although I'd rather not watch my friends die all that much. I mean, I'm not a big fan of death. It often correlates with pain and stuff. But I think we can do it better, and particularly the cemetery. Now, I'm against embalming. Seems like a waste. Now, maybe if you were going to ship a body somewhere far away, you might want to embalm it, but I don't even like the idea of shipping bodies far away. And in the area I live in, there are a lot of people who are from somewhere else. And they moved here, and those folks in particular might be served by having a special cemetery that meets some better criteria than most of them. I don't like most cemeteries. Like where I come from, they're really boring. They're headstones and lawn. They seem kind of sad. And then every now and again people leave flowers on the tombstone, and my friends used to go steal those flowers, by the way, which is just as well because they were going to go bad. But I like to be buried on my own land. I do have to check on the legality of that, and I think it can be arranged. The county I live in is pretty flexible, and if I design it right, I can't imagine what complaints they would have. I mean, what could be the problem with it? And, you know, my body doesn't want to be lonely. It won't even know. I really don't have that much attachment to my body. I just happen to be using it at the moment because I have to live in something. And I won't exist anyway. I don't believe in a spirit. I'm just an electrochemical machine that will stop working. It would also be nice to have a cemetery that wasn't, or at least rituals for death, that weren't all involved with spiritual shit, which a bunch of them are. They're just used by the church to reinforce their mythological threats and shit. So, what I'm picturing, what I first thought was, okay, I have to figure out what goes where. I have to make some decisions. After 20 years in the forest, oh my God, did that tree fall down? It did. Another pine tree that fell down. Oh, it was part of one that died a while back. And it did not die of pine beetle plague. It died because it was old, gnarled, and unhappy. You want to see it? The part that's standing is up there. And then over there you can see part of it fell down. I guess it was a couple trunks together. That'll become firewood. That's the way I'll use most tree bodies. Or carving material would be better. That's a higher use of wood, which surprisingly will be an analogy for some of the fairly controversial things I'm about to suggest. Now, anybody who's easily offended or sensitive about death, don't watch the video. And really, anybody who's easily offended probably isn't going to watch any of my videos. Because I'm a lot less polite on video than I am in real life. Because I'm not talking to somebody real. Just like people who just total assholes online. Like I just got a bunch of comments from a vegan asshole. It really is a walking advertisement against veganism. Because he's so mean and insulting. Like, random insults that don't even have to do with my diet. Like he called my house a shack. And it's like, well, it's not a shack. It's pretty rustic, but it's big and cool. I mean, people walk in there and they go, wow, this is a cool building. You know, but he just gets to throw any insult he can at me for eating the carcasses, the rotting carcasses of animals, all this other shit vegans, some of the vegans say. Not all vegans are assholes. But boy, some of them are really good at it. Walking advertisements against veganism. Anyway, I'll probably already blocked that guy. Because, anyway, let's get back to land design. So my first thought was, I know I don't want to do things the way they were done before. I don't want to take a piece of land and dedicate it to death and have it only be used for that. It seems like a waste of land. Like in the city I come from, some of the best land in the city is cemeteries, and they were put there before the population went up. And so now you've got these really nice pieces of land nobody uses. I actually have slept in a cemetery I lived across the street from and done some other things in this cool tree there. Cool multi-trunk tree. And but still, they're just kind of lonely, weird places. Not all over the world, though. Like, I went to Mexico a couple times, quite a few, and their cemeteries, there are at least a few nights of the year, they have Day of the Dead, which is actually not just one night. There's different days for, like, kids have a day, and then there's one for other people, and then there's one for somebody else. I forget who. But the tradition there is really awesome. And the belief is that the spirits of the dead live on as long as you remember them. Now, I don't believe in a spiritual world at all. But I believe that is how we live on after we die. In the memories of others. And that's the kind of karma I care about. I don't care about this, reincarnation. Your sins of this life will make you reincarnate into a worse form, and that becomes a justification for the caste system and oppression and stuff. And it's like, that kind of karma, the Hindu karma, I don't buy into. But the idea that what we do in life matters to other people, the effect we have on other people and their memories of us, and that maybe we should be good people because then they'll have good memories of us. I don't know if that's a big part of Day of the Dead particularly, but the idea is that once people forget about you, then you go away. And it's surprisingly a good movie about this called Coco by Disney. And I say surprisingly because I wouldn't say Disney has always maybe done the best job at taking on something as complex a tradition as Day of the Dead. But they did a really good job of it. Every Mexican I've met has loved it. And it's a good story. And the animation is awesome and it's funny. But I know quite a bit about Day of the Dead. Starting with a friend of mine who had a Day of the Dead party back in the city I come from. And she's not Mexican or anything. Oh, by the way, Day of the Dead is also celebrated in other places as well. In Latin America and maybe Spain, I forget. But it's actually a fusion, by the way. It's not like some pure indigenous thing that's all really, sacred and perfect. So if you try and correct everybody on how exactly everything's supposed to be done, well, fuck off. It's a syncretic event, and it's celebrated slightly differently in different places. And it even gets weird stuff added to it, like the James Bond movie opens up. There was a James Bond movie, I forget the name of it. It opens up with a Day of the Dead parade in Mexico City. And that Day of the Dead parade did not exist prior to the movie. And they spent, lots of money, had thousands of people working on costuming, and they made these big, huge puppet things and stuff. It was pretty cool. James Bond type stuff. And what's cool is Mexico City adopted that tradition and just sucked it into their culture. because it's a syncretic culture. It's a cultural mix, and that's okay. Culture doesn't have to be pristine. It doesn't have to be controlled by you, and anyone else who does anything with culture is practicing cultural appropriation. In this case, they stole from James Bond and included it into their culture, and James Bond stole from them. Great, wonderful. Anyway, let's get back to cemeteries. So my first thought was, don't make the cemetery where there's a good view, because I don't want to waste the view on a cemetery. And then I remembered that I don't want to do a normal cemetery. I want to make a cemetery sculpture park. I want to make a cemetery that people hang out in. And instead of having individual gravestones, I want to build big sculptures that will last a long time, and to put brass plaques in it for each person. So everybody does still get their headstone. It's an engraved brass plaque, or forged, founded, whatever. Founded? I guess founded. Brass plaque. And we bury their body. Hopefully the body gets here real quick, and we can put it in the ground real quickly. And it could have a ceremony available. And then that body will rot in the ground and will eventually get dug up. Because bodies get dug up anyway to make room for more bodies. We can't, I mean, there's more dead people in the world than there are living people. More people have died than are alive. Duh. That's how shit works. And we can't turn the whole world into a cemetery so everybody's got their own cemetery plot. And so you're going to have to eventually recycle them. And, you know, in some places I've seen they dig you up if nobody pays for your gravesite. So you have to continue paying for the use of that land. When nobody is remembering you enough to pay for it, you get dug up. And of course your body's all rotted away by then, but you are left with the skeleton. And skeletons are cool. I've always liked bones. Some people think they're weird and gross, but I think they're cool. I got bones in me right now. At least I hope so. I'm going to have a hard time walking. And so, you know, what do we do with those bones then? Well, I think we could use those. We could, somebody could put in their will or their contract with the cemetery, or both, that, you know, they could even auction them off, or they could give them to family members. There's lots of cultures in the world. I don't know where my good lighting's at here. There's lots of cultures that deal with bodies in different ways. Whether it's Zoroastrianism, where they have sky burial and they put you up on this big roof, and then carry on, which is either something you carry onto a plane, or it's a type of bird that eats dead stuff, like vultures and stuff. And those are good birds. They're not disgusting. They're cleaning things up. And there's other ones that will put you up into a thing on a cliffside. There's lots of ways we can deal with dead bodies. We could always burn them too, and I could actually offer that as a service for people who wanted it. I could offer this service. They do that in India, I believe. I don't think you need to burn the wife along with it, which is some kind of bizarre tradition where the wife is, you know, she's really loyal to her husband. She'll die with her husband in the fire. And it's like, that's really kind of fucked up. Like, that doesn't sound very good for the wife. I'd rather be a widow than a burning up person. Anyway, so you got this cool sculpture park thing. And so I realized, as I was thinking about where to put it, I didn't want to waste the view on it. But if we're not looking at it as wasted land, if it's a place where you could go for a picnic, and there's benches all around it, and there's trees mixed all within it, so there's shade, you know, and it's terraced and comfortable, and it's like a nice place to hang out, then I would be willing to do that. And the other issue is it has to have access, because some people, humans are weird, okay, like once you're dead, who really cares? My opinion, but I'm a harsh, strange dude. But some people are going to want to visit the gravesite. And so they're going to want to visit that sculpture. And the sculptures could be all kinds of sculptures. So you'd be able to pick ahead of time what kind of sculpture you want to be buried under. I already know what I want to be buried under. I want to be buried under a big question mark. A big question mark sculpture. It goes up, has a big ball on the bottom, has a big staff, and then curves over. Now I'm worried about the curve falling down if it's made out of concrete or something, because concrete and rebar eventually get old, and I don't want to have a shitty old sculpture park that looks like shit. So it could be that the question mark's actually on a concrete backing it's attached to. That's just a structural issue. I don't know how to build big sculptures, but lots of other people do. So, but you could have ones that were various gods if you wanted to. You could be buried at the foot of your god. You could have a Jesus one. Jesus is very popular. So you could be buried at the feet of Jesus. Jesus would look over your body, take care of you as you rot away and the worms eat you. And I wouldn't want it to be open to the public all day, because if you do that, then people start to misuse the land. And you want to control for garbage and stuff like that. You could include traditions of different parts of the world, because there's been people that moved here in this area from different parts of the world. And like I remember where I come from, there was a Chinese cemetery, there was a Jewish cemetery. Well, this would be all of those. I mean, you could have a Star of David sculpture and you could get buried under that. Fine with me. You could have a cross one. You could have a Shinto shrine. Not a lot of Japanese people around where I live, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be religious. I would like to generally not focus on the religious junk. But people, if they believe it and they like it, fine with me. I don't care. But I guess the question mark one is more like an atheist thing, or just open-minded, like exploration of the universe. That's why I'd want to be under that one. Because I don't know everything. We don't know everything. It's a mysterious, huge world, and we're in this tiny, tiny, minuscule little speck of it. You know? Like I said, I'd rather avoid the embalming. There could be non-denominational priest-type people to say shit at the funeral, if anyone even shows up, which they would. When someone dies, some people come from far away. When my dad died, I did not go to his funeral. I went and visited him when he was getting old, so I could talk to him. And I saw him for the last time. And that made more sense to me. There's no reason for me to go to a party where I don't really know the people well, although some of them were cool people. And it would have still been interesting. But my passport, I have issues. It's just, yeah, for him, I wouldn't be doing it. If it was for me or the other people, I'd be willing to. So I would have space available for that. Probably have a hotel next to it, so that people from far away could actually spend the night there. Could have a fire, and there could be a fire for as many people as are being buried right then, or around that time. I mean, people could even get married there. Getting married is about as bad as dying, in my opinion. But my opinion is kind of weird, so sorry about that. What else? Sadness? I don't think death has to be treated as a somber affair. I remember I went to my grandfather's funeral. In fact, it's the only funeral I've ever been to in my life. I've been to exactly one funeral. I'm just not real into them. But I went to that, and it was kind of somber and sad. And I hoped there was a wake after it, because I got a little Irish in me, heritage, quite a bit actually. And so hopefully, like when I die, be a party. Fuck it. I mean, life's been kind of annoying, stuck on a planet of questionable people. And, it's not like I moved away to some terrible place. I just move on to nowhere. That's where I'll go after I die. Nowhere. Except in your memories. Which is a great place to live in most cases. Except for the people who fucking hate me. But you know, only a few of the people that hate me actually have ever known me very well. A lot of them just hate the shit I say or whatever, so they don't really matter. And maybe I can even live on as a bot. I was looking that up again. How I can turn all the videos, everything I've ever written, everything about me, including maybe I could even pull in some things I just agree with a lot and make it all into a video bot. There's certainly plenty of pictures and video to draw from, and AI is getting so good at it. And I should actually start working on that now. And that would be a motivator to talk about all these different issues that I think about. And maybe you're actually watching right now or interacting with a bot that talks about death. All the things I say, all the disorganized crap I say, can get all outlined and organized. And you can say, well, what does Brian think? Or you could ask Brian, like, what should happen to my body after I die? And my bot will say, well, let's make a list of all your options, and here's the ones I think are good or bad, depending on whatever. Like, I think it's ways to ship bodies far away, to get buried wherever they came from, the person came from. It's just like stick you in the ground, you know, but you need a nice place to do that, right? And you don't want to be in a place you have no attachment to, but this place for many people would have a specialness. I want a special space that celebrates death as much as it does birth. You know, it celebrates life, because death is an integral part of life. And I know a lot of people really don't like to think about that. They try and avoid it. They want to live forever, you know, and they make up lots of mythology about death and how you don't really die, your spirit goes on, and you go to heaven or hell. I could actually build a hell too. That's a separate idea. That'd be a whole different video. But you can imagine, like, what if I built a little hell theme park? That'd be really fun, actually. And it wouldn't actually have probably any real torture. Although you could have some painful experiences there. You know, eat some hot peppers and suffer in some way. But I don't think that'd be part of the graveyard. I think that's a different whole thing. I want the graveyard to be peaceful, full of flowers, full of bird houses and water for birds. Water features would be really nice. And so what I've ended up is, I was thinking about this. I think of a spot I already rejected. I rejected it because it has this really nice view, but it's got the right amount of slope. I still would terrace it. And I could grow new trees or keep the trees that there are. But some of them are, if I bulldoze terraces into it, some of them will get killed. But, and I could enlist other people like landscape designers with software and stuff to propose different ways the configurations of it could be. And really, anybody who visited it, some of them would be coming there. Well, see, I want to keep it, I mean, how open do I want it? The problem is I want that spot to be pretty open to the public a lot. And it might feel weird to have it be used too much for other shit. Like, just become a place that didn't really respect those sculptures a lot. I guess I want to keep the tone of it focused on this intense feeling of being between life and death and the remembrance of those folks. And so that particular spot, I don't know about that. And the view is optional. And it's not like I have a shortage of places to pick from. So I guess I have to, like, make a list of my top 6 areas I would do that with. And because I wouldn't expect to have a ton of clients, it doesn't have to be massive. You know, if it could handle like 30, 40 bodies at the same time, that would be good enough, I think. Maybe some people don't want to think about their loved one ever being dug up, and so we have to wait till there are no loved ones. And so then we have to calculate, you know, what's the average age coming in, or what's the earliest age of a client, a dead client, and then how long is it going to be before nobody's ever going to visit their grave again. And we could even track that. Like, you know, whose grave are you here to see? It would have a wall around it and a gate. So yeah, I think the spot I was thinking of for really more heavily public use. So I don't think that is the right spot. And it should be a spot that isn't the best for something else. Like I've got spots picked out to put big buildings. Well, I wouldn't put a cemetery there then. And it doesn't all have to be, I mean, there's many ways to think of it. Like what if it was a big area? I have a 13-acre area and it could have sculptures within it that aren't even all next to each other, but that you can go and be in a part of it. I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to picture like future use of land. That's one of the big fuck-ups people make, like where they design the use of whole cities and then the design gets half implemented. That happened in the city I came from, and that happens with others as well. Because sometimes you either got to go with the full plan or you get a half implemented plan that doesn't really serve the purpose. Like where I come from, there was a bunch of long, skinny parks that were all supposed to connect. But then exceptions got made, development happened, and now you've got these long, skinny parks that don't connect. And they're still nice parks. But it would have been nice if the overall plan was considered. And that's what I'm trying to do with my land. You know, it's not even as big as a whole city or anything. But figure that out, you know. And if I did this right, other people might copy it. I could even have graves in there of people whose grave is unknown, like Genghis Khan. Not that he was exactly necessarily a good guy, but it kind of depends on your perspective. You know, he was a war type guy, and his genes probably spread not through entirely voluntary means, but he does not have a place where he's officially buried. And I know some people have graves that people like to visit, like they like to visit the grave of Bruce Lee, Jimi Hendrix, some poets in Europe. I don't know, I haven't traveled that much in Europe, you know. But I'm picturing, because there's some graveyards that have like little building-sized shrines for each person, and they're kind of crowded, and it seems a little bit, I don't know, arrogant to make a little building for your dead self after most people have totally forgotten who the hell you are, and then have them all crammed together. That seems weird, but when I'm picturing it, then there's a lot more space available, and it's a multi-use space, but not so multi-use that it isn't fairly quiet. Like I mentioned having a wedding in it. That might, I mean, I was kind of joking, maybe. But I think that might not be the right mix. I think just having it be a quiet space that has shade, that has these cool sculptures and shrines, and then is used sometimes for burial. I mean, I'm not picturing a big space, really. And I think it should be special. It should be fairly close in. So it's not like sculpture next to sculpture next to sculpture, but, you know, kind of sculpture, some trees, a sculpture, and then have really nice shade for people. And then running water, like I said, would be great. A koi pond would be very peaceful and wonderful. I would love to be buried next to a koi pond, but I would love to have a koi pond anyway. I'd rather have it while I'm alive, because that's when I can look at them and enjoy them. It'd be so cool. I'd be like the coolest guy if I had a koi pond, by my standards, and those are the ones that matter. So that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts about death and dying, and how it can be done better, and what you would want, what kind of sculpture you'd want to be buried under. Could be anything. It could be an amazing tree. It could be a big, cool stack of rocks with succulents in it and water coming out the top that slowly goes down through it and in a tiny little creek. I could make a volcano, and that volcano could go off like once or twice a year. We could use pyrotechnics and could have a tunnel within it so we can load up the lava that comes out. Well, that's your creative task, is you come up with what would you want to be buried under. And as a side question, would you want your bones to be dug up and then put somewhere? I don't know if you want that or not. I could try and auction off my skull. Maybe even do it before I die. Although if I fall off something and crush my skull won't be worth much anymore. And people used to really like pieces of people. Like there's saints that there's like supposedly their finger or something. And that's revered and stuff. But I think that'd be fun. I think it'd be great. Because I like bones. My bones should not go to waste. Also, I have all this metal in my legs because I broke them. And so somebody could actually get that metal. That would be pretty cool. Stick it on the mantle. Yeah. Well, let me know what you think. Here's that hill again. I don't know how many times I've walked up this hill. As soon as I turn off the camera after I've been talking about something, I immediately start having ideas about all the stuff I didn't say. And here's some of them to add on to that video about a custom, cool cemetery. The best cemetery in the world. Maybe. One of them was kids. I don't want to turn it into a kid's playground. That doesn't have quite the semi-somber seriousness of the feeling of it that I'm looking for. But I should have a kid's playground right next to it. So those kids who really don't understand death very well at all could go off and play in that. I should also have some food nearby and water to drink. In fact, I could even have a spring of life in the cemetery. That would be pretty cool. I could have a water thing that stores water in a hidden spot and then cycles it through this spring, and then the water goes underground and then gets solar pumped back up into the tank. And that doesn't even have to have a battery. It could just run during the day when there's sun out. And the birds would love that too. So a spring of life would be great. Of course, I want flowers all through there and majestically cool plants and vines. And some of the sculptures could even have vines on them. That would be pretty cool. I guess I have to have a crematorium too. Because even though I mentioned this idea of burning people on a funeral pyre, a pyre, that's P-Y-R-E, I believe. Some people don't like that idea, so I could have a crematorium that was more organized and just burns your body up into ashes, and people could leave with the ashes or spread them there, or both, whatever. You know, because we can fit in with customs that are from all over the world, from all different cultures. And those could all be available, including, I suppose, the Zoroastrian idea of a sky burial, where somewhere off to the side, somewhere where most people won't see it, because some people might not like that idea, where you could just have your body placed up on this raised platform, and then it'd be food for vultures. Why not? Vultures got to eat too. I wouldn't even mind that. I wouldn't mind being eaten by vultures. That would work out just fine. In fact, as far as the funeral pyre goes, I remember a long time ago I was doing some fish farming in a poorly made pool. It had straight sides on it, which is very bad. I don't want water containers with straight sides because stuff dies in it. In this case, I went out to my little fish farming spot, and there was a dead rabbit in it and a dead coyote. And I'm pretty sure the rabbit was being chased by the coyote, and that the rabbit fell in, and then the coyote was excited and jumped in after it, and then neither one of them could get out. So they both died there. So I go out and check on my fish pond, and I find a dead rabbit and a dead coyote, and I was like, ah, geez, this is a badly designed pool because there's no sloping sides to it, so things can't get out. So I fished them out of there, and I just took them very close by, and I piled firewood all on top of them and burned them just to get rid of their bodies. Now I would probably keep the bones, and I do have some bones of some animals I found in containers in the art studio, just to wait for the flesh to rot off, and then I'll have these skeletons of these coyotes and stuff like that, whatever dies, and then, you know, like archaeology type people might want to come and glue those back together, like reconstruct the full skeleton. It would be pretty neat. Could also have chambers to compost in for people who don't want to be in the dirt. I'd rather just be in the dirt. In fact, you don't even have to dig me up. It'd be fine. But I do like the bone idea quite a bit. But you could have chambers that you get buried in, and we could add in mushrooms and you know, dirt with organisms in it that like to eat bodies, and they would process that body real quick. And some people like that, you know. Coffins. Well, a lot of funeral homes, I think, make a bunch of money off fancy-ass coffins that they bury. I find that to be ridiculous. In fact, I mean, you could just wrap my body up in cotton and dump it in the hole. But if I did have a coffin, I'd rather have just a simple pine box. And maybe I could even paint that box if there was any ritual going on, if anyone cared about my body, or they wanted to carry it around for a while, because people like to do that. But I could paint it myself. And I could even have a vampire coffin made. And then that would be kind of cool. And I could actually make that available. That could be nicer. And people could even sleep in it if they wanted to. That'd be a funny thing to offer people, is not as part of the cemetery, just as a special place that you could sleep. Some kind of goth weirdos would like that. I'd probably sleep in a coffin. It'd have to be kind of comfortable, though. I'm not dead yet, so. Nearby, I guess it would be good to also offer a space. There was a hospice space. Because sometimes we don't just die suddenly, but we know we're going to die, and we don't want to die in a hospital with a bunch of tubes sticking in us. I really think wasting medical money on somebody who's going to die in a week anyway is really just a total waste. I don't want to die with tubes in me. I guess I need an end-of-life contract. I need a plan for my death. Currently, my plan is pretty bad. But if I build a whole cemetery, I'll be building other related stuff. And having hospice care location would be good, with a hotel next to it, so people could spend time with their dying loved one and have a medical staff. And this is a little more controversial, but depending on the jurisdiction, I don't know what the laws on this are here, but have assisted suicide be available. That seems like it would be a nice service to offer, because if I get old enough at some point, I'm not going to want to exist. Or if I just get annoyed enough with life. And so it would be nice to be able to offer assisted suicide, and people would have to apply for it and make sure we have total agreement that that's what should happen. And I remember in the movie Soylent Green, which might not be the best example of anything we want to emulate. Because, you know, even though I don't see anything inherently wrong with cannibalism, I don't think most people's bodies are clean enough to eat. They're filled with toxins and medicines and drugs and weird shit. So I don't know about that. I don't think I want to set up any cannibalism options, just because it would be too offensive to too many people. There's probably some small subset of people who would like that. I think the term for that is vores, V-O-R-E. Had to look that up the other day. People who have fantasies about being eaten or eating someone. And I think that's a market I'm just not going to get involved with, because it's too gross for too many people. But it is a waste of meat, technically, but polluted meat for the most part. Anyway, Soylent Green has a scene in it where an old guy decides it's his time to go. He's gonna cut out. And the reason it's a bad example of a movie is because society is set up in some pretty evil ways. And I wouldn't want anybody to be in that position. But what I liked about it was they had this kind of slideshow and videos where as you drift off to sleep with assisted suicide, you get all these beautiful imagery and cool stuff. And that scene, that one scene in that movie, I did like. Like, if I knew I was going to die and I decided, check me out, it's time for me to check out, that would be a cool environment to do that in. I could be relaxed. I think Timothy Leary actually did a bunch of acid just before he died, and he had his friends and family around him. That guy seems like he died pretty well. And I don't know if I want anybody around or not. At this rate, I'll be alone, and very happy to die alone in the forest. But I would like some medical assistance rather than just blow my brains out or something. Because I know some people close to me who have done that, and that's their choice. It's fine. I don't really mind, but it's not very elegant, I guess, unless you're really into guns. But it also adds to gun death statistics, and then people who are in favor of gun control try and include those statistics in with gun violence statistics, and I just want those totally separated, because deciding that's your easiest way to check out is perfectly fine. It's a little bit messy, and it's kind of rude to do it to the people who find your body and didn't know about it, and it just kind of adds to the bummer of it. So I think drugs would be a better option. There's plenty of drugs you can take that will just kind of make you drift off to sleep. I mean, that's what happens to my dogs. When they get old enough and they're not happy, or they're getting attacked by the other dogs, because dogs turn on each other. If you were the alpha dog and then you're older, the dogs might decide one day, let's just rip them apart. That's how alpha dogs die, and that's not real pretty either. So rather than have that happen, when I see that's happening in my pack, I take him to the vet. They give him a shot to put him to sleep. Then they give him a shot to stop their systems in some way, probably breathing, and the dog dies. And I've had really old dogs that I think were appreciative of it. So I think assisted suicide should be legal. It should be done in a way that makes messy suicide not necessary, you know? And we don't have to correlate with being really upset. You don't have to go jumping off a bridge or anything. I guess the Golden Gate Bridge is popular for that sort of thing. But then somebody has to fish you out of the water. It's kind of just a little bit rude, I guess. And of course, putting on an explosive vest or getting your guns and shooting some people before you die is also extremely impolite. And I would rather those people just start with themselves. But I think if someone's doesn't want to be alive, they own them. The government doesn't own them. The family doesn't own them. They own them. You know? And if you really don't want to be here, I don't want you to have to be. And I think you should have available to you options to check out well and peacefully. And so that could be part of it too, is a hospice care nearby with that as an option. It's hard shit to think about because we don't want to lose somebody we care about, but we're going to lose us all anyway. You know, we're all going to die. That's a given. So might as well just accept it and deal with it. I've had to deal with a lot of death with my dogs, and so I've gotten used to that, unfortunately. The most dogs I ever had was 12. And if you have that many dogs, well, then you're going to be dealing with some dog deaths, one way or the other. Good preparation gives you an understanding of the impermanence of life, and maybe really understanding how impermanent life is a good motivator. It's encouragement to use our lives to the fullest while we are here, because it ain't going to last forever. So, add your thoughts. Goodbye. Well, I did forget to add that there are other people who think about stuff like this. There's grief counselors. There's even something called death cafes, where people talk about death and their feelings when somebody, dies. Especially it's sad when a young person dies either through an accident like cars. I'm really not a big fan of cars because they're so dangerous. I wish there were less cars. I don't know what the car death statistics are, but I bet they're pretty dang high. And I don't want to die in a car accident. That would be like my worst nightmare of how to die would be car accident. Yeah. You know, I did forget one other thing, and that's organ donation. Because your dead body is actually useful in ways that could save other people's lives or their eyesight or whatever. I'm listed on my driver's license as an organ donor, but I live in a remote place, and probably if I die today, no one's going to find my body for more than a month. So that's not going to be convenient. And also I'm pretty far from anywhere that harvests organs. So I don't know how long the period is between when you die that your organs are still useful to somebody. It does seem like a waste if they're not used, but it could be somebody dies in the city, because most people live in the city. They get their organs harvested, and then whatever's left over gets shipped out here to get buried. That would still work out. So I am in support of organ donation. I think it's a great thing to do. If somebody dies far enough away from everything, though, then it doesn't really matter, I guess. And actually, now that I think about it, with assisted suicide, you would have to figure out if the method used for assisted suicide left the organs available or not. Because if you were going to go with assisted suicide, then you could have people ready to go to harvest your organs as fresh as possible. I assume that is helpful. It sounds a little ghoulish. Goulash. I like goulash, actually, but not that kind. But ghoulish, to be waiting for someone to die to harvest their organs. That would be fine. I mean, hell, even if somebody did it way out here, if there was assisted suicide way out here, there could even be a helicopter that picks your organs up, because if somebody's life is on the line, it might be worth it. Although then what am I going to do? You know, have the organ harvesting happen on site? I don't know. It sounds a little creepy to me, but I think if you think like a doctor and you think about the lives of people who could be saved from that, it would be really important. But if it was assisted suicide, which that's kind of what I'm picturing, like a planned death, although you could always call a helicopter and say, hey, somebody just died because they fell off something and broke their head or their spine, so we got fresh organs for you. That just sounds wrong to me. It sounds like, yeah, I don't know. Death is scary a little bit to people, and I understand that. You know, we spend so much time, we're programmed to survive. We're programmed to keep living. And so the very idea of accepting death in any way scares us. We're supposed to be bothered by it. And it's like, well, I guess I understand that at a human level as a regular enculturated person. But at the same time, I guess I don't totally get it. No, I totally understand it. Like, especially if death involves pain. That's obviously going to be horrible and terrible. And I would rather not die a painful death. I'd rather just go when it's time, do the Irish exit, and check the fuck out. But I don't know. Organ harvesting on site just seems kind of extra weird. I think that facility, that hospice facility, should not be located near the cemetery. With the cemetery, I want people to be focused on the memory of the person. I want people to, come visit it once a year with their family and remember the person that they loved, and remember how much they love each other, and how we have such a short time with each other that we can spend together, and remind ourselves that we have to do that well, that we have to take care of each other, and that life matters. So death can focus us on enriching our lives. And I guess if you're an organ donor, you're also serving even after your death. which I think is a noble thing to do. I keep thinking of stuff. And along with the idea of coffins being too expensive and big ripoff, funeral homes in general are too expensive. Like, I would obviously charge clients ahead of time for this service because there would, there's land set aside for it. There'd have to be staff. Somebody's got to open that gate when people want to visit. Somebody's got to maintain those plants and the kind of garden around it. And so they would pay ahead of time. They wouldn't be having to pay forever, though, because the plan would be to not have you own that piece of land for eternity until the sun eats the earth. It would be, until you're composted, and then your plot is available. And if you wanted to donate your bones into being placed in a catacomb-like tunnel, that'd be really cool, because there's catacombs in Europe and stuff where they have like skulls all stacked up, and that just looks neat to me. I mean, it could even be a kind of a tourist attraction. In fact, that could fund part of the cemetery. You could actually donate your bones, and if you donated your bones, then you might get a better price, because we essentially are buying your bones to make this cool tunnel that people go through and have this intense underground with skylights and stuff, this intense death experience of being down below the earth with the dead. That'd be all right. And I don't want to have a thing where you buy a bunch of cut flowers and stuff for the funeral. If there was a funeral here, I mean, you can do whatever you want. You could have a funeral somewhere else and then bring it here. But the place would already be filled with flowers. And we would pick flowers that flower a long time for a lot of the year, and have flowers that are seasonal, that so as much of the year as possible, there's butterflies, and since there's running water, there'd be birds singing. That sounds magical to me. And I don't, like I say, I think I would just be gone. But for anybody that wants to visit me when I'm dead, I would love there to be a nice, beautiful garden, a garden cemetery, sculpture garden cemetery. Never heard the idea before. That's where I want to be. That's where I want my body to go. Yep. So I'm selfish. I'm doing it for me.